Meanwhile, former State Department officials are confirming department leadership was warned not to pursue an investigation into the origins of COVID-19. This in fear of a probe bringing unwanted attention to American funding of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. This, of course, is the lab where the virus likely escaped from. Joining me right now is former White House senior advisor for strategic communications, Mercedes Schlapp. Mercedes, it's good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. What can you tell us about the inside of this story, where there was obviously a movement to downplay the Wuhan lab, downplay this dangerous research going on called gain-of-function research? Peter Daszak, the head of Eco Health Alliance, apparently was behind this movement to not make any connection between funding from the U.S. to the Wuhan lab in China, where this very dangerous research was taking place.
Well, I got to tell you, Maria, these are very troubling findings. We know that the deep state is alive and well, but we got to give credit where credit is due. With Secretary Mike Pompeo, who wanted to ensure that we looked into the origins of COVID-19. This is an answer that not only the American people, but people across the globe deserve to know whether the Chinese ended up creating this leak in a lab. And we deserve answers and accountability and transparency, which we know we're not getting any of it from the Chinese government, as they're reluctant to give access and data to even the World Health Organization, and has created a lot of this frustration. But I got to tell you, Maria, I think we got to look and see and look deeper. And it's very troubling that you have State Department officials, American State Department officials, pushing back and basically obstructing any sort of investigation into the origins of COVID-19.
Well, look, we know that we cannot trust the Chinese Communist Party. Their main goal is to overtake America as the #1 superpower. So if I take you back to 2020, in March and April, February, when all of this was going on, we saw what the CCP did. In fact, I was among the first to come out on the air and say, my sources at hospitals are telling me that there were ships loaded with things like gloves and masks, and those they were coming from China, because the majority is made in China. They were coming toward the West, and they were told, turn around. We need all of this PPE for China. And I reported that early on, and that was pretty much the beginning of China cornering the market for PPE. So, I mean, now, we're wondering where this started and why. Can you take us back to the conversations that President Trump was having with Xi Jinping about trade? I know that China's economy had begun to stumble. China was not in a good place in terms of a trade deal. How do we know that this was even an accident? I asked President Trump about it, by the way. I said, was this an accident? He said, well, was it intentional? Well, we'll see what happens. I'm going to run that soundbite so people see what he said at the time. We didn't know what the goal and what the motivations were of the CCP at that time.
Look, it's been very clear that China has been dominating in the area and getting stronger in terms of its economy and trying to weaken the United States with the unbalanced trade agreements. It's why President Trump was so insistent from day one that he was going to toughen his tariffs and put tariffs in place to benefit the American worker and the American farmers. And it's why he did decide that we were going to go after China from the trade perspective. So, look, I think for the Chinese and the Communist Party, the mere fact that you have this Wuhan Institute of Virology, basically where there's military and civilian research happening at the same time, that this possibility of a leak did occur, and that the United States was actually, and that of NIH, where Fauci was involved, they were giving taxpayer dollars to this lab, is absolutely troubling. And the more and more that we discover that relationship between Fauci wanting to work closely with the Chinese, It is so disturbing. We cannot trust the Chinese government. We need to make sure that all the documents are declassified, because what we are seeing right now is we got to get to the bottom of it. We need to understand what happened in this lab, and if it was because of their actions that has led to the death of millions of people across the globe.
Yeah. Well, look, so far, I mean, the walls are obviously closing in on Anthony Fauci, but, you know, I saw a soundbite yesterday. He wouldn't even say that the CCP would want to hide it, would you know, make us look somewhere else and don't look here, look over here. He wouldn't even corner the CCP. I saw an interview on MSNBC with him yesterday. I was astounded. He will not criticize the CCP, Anthony Fauci. I want to move on to Trump speaking at North Carolina's annual state Republican. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say Dr. Fauci is the typical swamp globalist who wants to play nice with China, and it has become, I think, a very dangerous game that I think he needs to be held accountable for.
All right, so President Trump will speak at the North Carolina annual state Republican Party convention tomorrow. He's also set to speak at the CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference in Dallas next month. Mercedes, what are you expecting to hear from President Trump? He says he's going to bring back rallies as well.
Look, I think that President Trump's voice is so important in the Republican Party because he has been one to bring together a broad coalition. He's brought together more people, blue-collar workers, Hispanics, African Americans. He's been able to broaden the tent as we need so much in the party, and people want to hear from him. He's been deplatformed by the big tech companies, and the president has a very strong voice, and he has to talk about his agenda and how he was so successful during his 4 years, and also has to be that voice against Biden and the far left, which we know is being destructive to our nation and to our economy. So, look, we are so thrilled that the president's coming to CPAC, Dallas, Texas. It's the weekend of July 9th through the 11th. It's a national conference. What we have seen as Matt and I have traveled across the country is that people are yearning. They want to know that we are fighting to save America, that we're not going to let America fall into the hands of these socialists and these far left that are basically dominating the Democrats' agenda. And you have to remember, it's more than 75 million people who supported President Trump, and we're at a critical point right now that we need to ensure that we win in 2022, the House majority, the Senate majority, put it back into the hands of the Republicans so we have common sense solutions to ensure that we don't move further to the left as we've seen the Democrats do.
Yeah, no, I know that CPAC is doing really well. Really quick, Mercedes, what does your gut tell you? Do you think Trump runs again in 2024?
You know, that's a big question, and I think it's a big topic of debate at our kitchen table.
Take a shot at it.
I think he's going to wait and see. Well, I think there's a good possibility he can run. I've gone back and forth on it, but I do think he's going to see what happens if Biden's going to run again, and it's going to be a lot of, it's going to be an interesting field if he decides not to run.
Oh, yeah. Mercedes, good to see you this morning. Thank you so much. Mercedes Schlapp joining us.
Thank you so much.
We will watch and keep an eye on CPAC Dallas, Texas.